Hey, Rick Sayes here. Welcome to another episode of the Outdoor Biz Podcast, where I hope to provide entertaining conversations with retailers, brand managers, athletes, executives, and others in the outdoor biz to get their stories, tips, strategies, productivity tricks, and ideas that you can apply and take your career or business to the next level. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. I've used Audible for many years now. I'm on the road a lot, and Audible allows me to enjoy the great books I discover or are recommended by friends. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/theoutdoorbizpodcast. There are over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Start your 30-day free trial with Audible today. Hey guys, welcome to episode 50 of the Outdoor Biz Podcast. Wow, 50. That came up pretty quick. Today we're speaking with my great friend and partner in many outdoor adventures, both near and far, Steve Barker. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Hey, thanks, Rick. Glad to be number 50. That was a great year for me, my 50th year.
Nice.
Finally, it's the year where all the pressure's off. If you just start showing up at 50, you get points.
Well, that's good to know. So from here on out, I can just start showing up for the podcast and it'll be fine.
That's it. By the time you're my age, you're a hero just to be breathing every day. So it's all good.
Yep. Awesome. That's great. Well, it's great to have you on as guest 50. We've done a lot of fun stuff together and have more fun things to do. So why don't we start with your first exposure to the outdoors? How was that as a little kid? Did you start climbing and hiking and stuff as a kid?
Yeah, I probably come from that get out, stay out generation where my parents kicked me out every morning and told me not to come back until dinner. And I grew up in a little town, Oyster Bay on Long Island, and, started exploring things in my backyard. And my mom was real sick when I was young, so spent a lot of time in the hospital. So I spent a lot of time on my own and found the outdoors as a place that I could go and just spend endless hours turning over rocks, going fishing,
cool,
hiking different paths and stuff.
Oyster Bay, you must have had a bunch of fun stuff to explore out there, huh?
Yeah, it's interesting. You talk about being from New York area, and people think you're from the city, but Oyster Bay was actually pretty rural, or relatively rural, and so lots of trails and hiking. And I ended up that all evolved into. Eventually, I scored a job when I was, 11 or 12, mowing the lawn at Sagamore Hill, which was Teddy Roosevelt's family home.
Oh, wow.
And boy, that was certainly inspiring to see all of his exploits and go in the house. And it was like a museum of exploration and certainly was very inspiring.
That must have been pretty fun. I mean, anything that you did back then as a kid stick with you in life? I guess fishing probably, huh?
Certainly fishing and nature and loving critters. I used to look under rocks and look for turtles and frogs and things. Nice. I was quite the nature boy as growing up.
Yeah. And what was your first outdoor job? More traditional outdoor retail, ski shop, climbing shop, something like that.
Well, interesting. At 14, my father moved us all to the West Coast following the evolution of the capacitor business to the West Coast. And we moved to La Jolla, and I thought my world had come to an end because I really liked Long Island and my friends. And so found myself in La Jolla with a New York accent. Ooh. And was the dork from New York. Ooh. And the only thing I had going for me was I had started to ski when I was back in New York and had loved to go out in our neighborhood and cross-country ski and also go up into Vermont and go skiing. And so when I was 16, I asked my parents for a pair of skis. We had a ski club at school, and I wanted to be involved in the ski club but needed a pair of skis. And my dad, being sort of the guy he was, I came out, they sang me happy birthday, and over in the corner, I see what looked like a pair of skis. I was pretty excited, all wrapped up,
Yeah.
and unwrapped it, and there was one ski. And my dad had gotten me a job working off the other ski as the rental boy at a local ski shop called Frederick Ski and Hike in downtown La Jolla.
Wow.
So at 16, I was in the outdoor business, and in those days, ski shops, for the most part in Southern California, were closed
Yeah.
in the summer
Right.
and just open in the winter.
Right.
And when I was 17, the owner, Ma Frederick, came to me and said, "How would you like to help me open up a backpacking shop in the summertime?" Because I'd been backpacking a few times, so that made me the resident expert.
Did you backpack?
So it's
Sorry, did you backpack in New York, or you picked that up out here?
No, that was out
Got
here.
you, okay.
So at 17, I had an open to buy, and on other people's money. So that was quite an experience.
I'll bet.
Well, at the same year when I was 16, my folks sent me to Outward Bound, and
Oh.
so I really I learned some skills and found that, boy, that was super fun. The whole idea of climbing and skiing and backpacking. So
Where was your Outward Bound adventure? Where'd you go?
Northwest Outward Bound out of Mackenzie Bridge, Oregon.
Cool.
We spent, I don't know, 25 days or something. And so as a 16-year-old kid, that was super impactful.
Yeah.
Liked the whole experience. Really was life-changing.
That's awesome. And when did you pick up rock climbing on the Outward Bound course?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I thought I had done rock climbing before and realized that all I was doing was attempting suicide. So I actually learned some skills at Outward Bound, which I later continued to hone with like Yosemite Mountaineering School. And
Right, saved your life, those guys.
Yeah, it certainly did.
Where was your first backpacking trip?
My first backpacking trip was up into San Jacinto, up the Devil Slide Trail. A friend of mine and myself, I remember it to this day because it was in November. And we were at about, 8,000 feet. And my friend Tom had a cotton sleeping bag, and we had no tent. And I woke up in the middle of the night hearing this crackling, and down at the foot of my sleeping bag was Tom starting a fire with the two essentials. He was burning our map and our toilet paper, trying to stay warm.
Wow. That was a chilly night, I'll bet.
It was very chilly. So started to learn about gear right there.
Gotcha. So you survived that. So, and tell the audience how Eagle Creek got started. Eagle Creek got started up there, right? Near San Jacinto somewhere. Am I right on that?
Yeah. So from Fredericks, I went away, went to school, came back, worked at Fredericks a little longer after coming back from Oregon State. And from Fredericks, went up and opened a retail store in Idlewild. And at, I think I was 21 and a half, 22, something like that.
This was on your own, or this was with Fredericks still?
No, this was on my own. My dad, again, was great and, put up the first, I think he gave me $2,000. A friend of mine put up $2,000, and we scammed and hustled another $2 or $3 grand out of friends and relatives and opened up a little retail store in Idlewild called Mountain People. And I met my wife Nona there about 2 years in, and we started to make product. Always loved starting businesses. Running businesses was a long-term challenge, but starting businesses was always a passion.
So anybody can do projections, right? Start a business, just projections, away you go.
I had no idea what I was doing when we opened up Mountain People. I remember calling Ma Frederick and said, this was about 60 days into business. because I thought I had this whole thing figured out because I knew how to buy stuff, right? And so I call her and go, Mom, looking at these invoices, and what does 210 net 30 mean? And she went, that means you had to pay your bill about 15 days ago. Really learning a lot of OJT at a young age. And but we started making gear, and back then, there was a lot of stuff that wasn't available. Most of the gear at that point there was a few U.S. brands, and then there was a lot of government surplus and a lot of European stuff that just was not designed for the sports and activities.
What years was this? This was
what we were doing. This was 73, 74.
Yeah.
So we started with chalk bags, quickly then started making, we called them Swami belts, which was a climbing harness. And then that morphed into day packs and internal frame packs.
And you had a couple, three brands.
Mountain People.
Couple, three brands under the Mountain People, right?
No, this was still Mountain People. All we had was Mountain People. And then this guy drove up in this hippie bus and stumbled out of this short bus that was painted up with his girlfriend. They were both in shorts and cowboy boots. So we were chuckling as we sat on our front porch of the shop at these hillbilly tourists that came down the steps. And this guy walks up and goes, "Hey, what is this all about?" And I ended up selling him a pair of, I think, Lois Scouts. Nice. And within a year, maybe 6 months, maybe he never went home. I don't remember. But anyway, Larry Harrison ended up
nice
becoming part of the Mountain People crew and ended up selling the gear that we were making.
So we just exposed Larry Harrison's first outdoor job.
There you go. That was it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But for one reason or another, mostly my own incompetence, we had a climbing school and a little nascent manufacturing business. The retail store, we ran the concession at the top of the Palm Springs tram, teaching skiing and renting toboggans.
Nice.
But again, lots of businesses, no capital, and
bootstrap, they call that.
And an incompetent, inexperienced CEO. So between my incompetence and the oil embargo and a big fire that hit the Idlewild area, our business kind of started to dry up and blow away. The retail store was paying most of the bills. And so heartbreaks, we ended up having to close the store down.
Oh, wow.
Packed all our stuff, Nona and I and our golden retriever Bert, into the back of a Volkswagen Squareback and paid off our employees and said sorry and headed out into the West looking for another place to set up a business.
Wow.
Not even thinking about the fact that we had zero money.
Did you know what kind of business you wanted to do?
We wanted to sew. I think we wanted to manufacture. It was that we really caught the bug and got a passion for making product.
Yeah.
And drove around the West, made it all the way to Jackson Hole, working odd jobs, and we never realized, we never really considered ourselves homeless. But I look back now and go, yeah, we were homeless.
Well, it was the first incarnation of the van life. It was just a squareback life.
There you go. There it was. We ended up coming back and ended up on what I now look back and think probably was something close to a commune. Lived on a farm in Cotati. Spent a summer in Cotati there was a friend of mine, John Fagan, who was a friend of Larry's, who for a while there was ended up at the end there being sales manager for Wilderness Experience. Anyway, he had a store in Cotati, and so we threw ourselves at his mercy and took up a guest room or a couch and spent the summer Nona had a job waiting tables. I started writing a business plan and wrote the business plan for Eagle
Oh,
Creek,
cool.
and ended up going down to San Diego because there was family there,
Yep.
and rent a little garage in Solana Beach where we sewed at night. I worked in Hanson's
Oh, really?
during the day. Nona waited tables. We both sewed at night. Well, I can't say we both sewed. I did more mundane things like cut and help her. She did the sewing, and
all those things need to be done.
We developed our first line. We opened up the doors of Eagle Creek with $2,500 that I don't know where we came up with $2,500, but we did.
Wow, nice. And the rest is history.
Started making mountain packs under the Eagle Creek name, and which later morphed into travel.
Yeah.
Sort of followed our customers as they went into travel. 83 was sort of that was 75 when we opened Eagle Creek. We made it to 83 by just sort of tenacity and sure will not to fail again.
Yeah, nice. Yeah.
And then in 83, we realized that we needed to make some wholesale changes and started to focus on travel. Realized we needed to probably get our sewing out of Solana Beach. Hiring surfers to sew was not the smartest plan.
Right.
So we moved to Mexico. That's about the time we met a guy named Ricky Schlesinger, who came to work for us as our East Coast sales manager.
Awesome.
And then over the years put together a great team.
Yeah, I bought my first backpack probably 1978, a Saker 2 from Eagle Creek.
There you go.
Back in the day.
There you go.
Yeah. And that building that you guys started in down there, that eventually ended up as the Belly Up, or was it next door to the Belly Up, which is now A16? Which one of those places?
Well, there was a building in Solana Beach called the Solana Trade Center, which was a World War II Quonset hut where they made torpedo generators and bombardier cameras.
Wow.
And so it was a cool big old building with probably asbestos roof but wood floors. And we were able to, I remember the first year we were in there, 13 cents a square foot, including utilities. And I got all pissed off because the guy next door, Dave Hodges, who owned the bar, I found out he was only paying 11 cents a square foot, including utilities. But he later became our landlord and really helped us grow by allowing us to expand slowly from one bay to another.
Yeah.
And then the whole Solana Trade Center, he did a great job fixing that up and turning it into sort of the cool shopping area of Solana Beach.
Yeah, it's awesome now. Yeah.
So where it was originally cheap and funky, then it was became no longer cheap, just
funky.
Still was funky. And then when it was no longer cheap or funky was when we decided we needed to move off the block, sold our retail store to A16.
Okay, got you.
And moved to a more industrial kind of thing.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that was awesome. That was a good start to that business, and then a lot of good years running that thing. So when did you get involved in nonprofit work? What was your first nonprofit project? Was it back then or before that? Or?
Well, I think, in the early 80s.
You've probably always been a conservationist. Just a lot of us are in the outdoor industry. We start there.
Well, I had gone to school to become a wildlife biologist.
Okay.
I figured I would spend my life outside working in conservation. And between the anti-war movement and everything else, and then I just got a little disenchanted, then got distracted by the great game of business by opening up our store, but always had, certainly the conservation gene had been hatched early in my life, but really what the impetus behind doing nonprofit work was being so stressed out about being 24/7 running a business. By that time, I had 2 kids. Didn't have much life outside of running our business. And it's a great business, and I loved it. I think, quite telling was my dad, who was wired kind of the same way. I remember he ended up leaving his business and came in one day looking all sad, and I go, "What's up?" And he takes out his day timer and he fans it in front of me, and I go, "What's that?" He said, "There's not one appointment in here."
Oh,
and he was judging his life
wow.
on the amount of appointments that he had, and he was a guy who, he didn't even have a bowling league. I mean, he did nothing but work.
Wow.
And realized that I needed to broaden myself out. And so Nona reminded me of all that. And I got on the town council, and here in a little town called Eltham Forest, I volunteered at the town council and realized that this whole area was being targeted for development. And we were reading one EIR, environmental impact report, after another.
Wow.
And that our little community was going to change drastically unless we got involved. And also then there was a big fire that threatened the community, and I got drafted into joining the fire department. So between those things, I ended up doing a lot of community service.
Yep.
The town council then morphed into forming an organization with a couple neighbors called the Escondido Creek Conservancy, with the idea that the only way that government is not going to protect this land. The only thing we can do, versus in addition to pushing back against these developments, is figure out how to conserve this land.
Right.
And so that was the start of the Escondido Creek Conservancy, which has gone on at this point to where we've over the last 25 years, we've preserved, been involved in preserving several thousand acres.
Awesome.
In the area, and now manage a couple thousand acres.
That's great.
Run a program to introduce nature to kids.
Oh, cool.
At an interpretive center.
Nice.
So
and you're on
that was the start.
Yeah, so you're on a number of nonprofit boards today. Which of those is most rewarding?
Yeah, from tech, it was the Conservation Alliance. When that was formed back in 1990, I think it was 90 or 89. That was super inspiring. And so as soon as we could afford, which was about a year or two after, we begged, borrowing our $10,000 to become a member. I remember that was huge, because I don't think Nona and I were making 60 grand combined at the time.
Wow.
So coming up with 10 grand was huge, but we really wanted to be part of it. And so joined the Conservation Alliance and ran for the board and got on the board of the Conservation Alliance, which then met Sally McCoy working on the Conservation Alliance. And when I termed out, right after she termed out, I followed her over to the OIA.
Okay.
Which was then Orca. Got involved in the OIA on the board. So things that today and different groups I'm involved in,
Alaska Wilderness League,
all revolve around conservation.
Yep.
Still working on locally with the Escondido Creek Conservancy.
Yeah.
So I always look at that. That's a little local wilderness, where it's local access for kids and neighbors to learn about wilderness. And then the Alaska Wilderness League, I'm able to work on big wilderness, work on things around the Arctic.
Which do you like better, little wilderness or big? Working on little wilderness or big wilderness?
I need that little wilderness every day. But I need to know that big wilderness is there, and try to get there whenever I can.
Right.
The Arctic, especially Alaskan Arctic, American Arctic, is just a phenomenal place of millions of acres.
It's amazing.
The Arctic National Wildlife Refuge is 10 million acres, which is about the size of most of our national parks in the lower 48 combined.
It's pretty amazing.
Having traveled all over the world, there's still a lot of places I want to see, but I've been very blessed in being able to go to a lot of wild places in my life. I just got back from a month in Mongolia, and as incredible as Mongolia is, the biodiversity there doesn't even touch what you can see in a day
Right.
in the Arctic.
Right.
And I think we take it for granted that we have that. It's something that every American owns, where, you know, black bears, grizzlies, and polar bears are running around, and many of them have never seen a human, where we have an incredible caribou herd of, in just the porcupine caribou herd, of a couple 100,000 caribou that do this incredible migration from
Right.
down south of the Brooks and in Canada out to the coastal plain of the Arctic. It's a place where not only are there incredible animals, but there's incredible people that live there and have lived there for thousands of years. These are Americans, the Gwich'in Nation.
Great stories.
They live there.
Yeah. We'll link to all those groups in the show notes. The show notes will be theoutdoorbizpodcast.com/episodes/50. So we'll have links to the Escondido Creek Conservancy, Alaska Wilderness League, all that stuff. That's awesome.
What I do there is mainly at the league. I've been on the board about 7 years. And one of the focuses is to get the outdoor industry engaged and aware that we have this incredible wilderness, and get them engaged in the conservation of it. Right now, it's never been under a bigger threat.
Yep.
We could lose it in the next 60 days. Maybe by the time you hear this podcast, they will have made the decision in Congress to drill there, which is really sad, because millions of Americans have worked for three decades to make sure that place doesn't end up.
Yeah, that would be disastrous.
Being developed.
Yeah.
So then that's a board I'm on. Then Outdoor Foundation is a nonprofit wing of the OIA.
Mm-hmm.
And the focus is youth engagement, getting next generations involved in the outdoors.
Great.
And that's really fun work, know, and really interesting. It's in some ways the biggest challenge we have, in that, you're really talking about how do you help change a whole generational trend away from the outdoors,
right?
And how do you reverse that? Pretty tough to do, and in the end, Beaver, who's on our board, says, how do we make this youth led? Because Beaver and myself and Sally McCoy and you, we didn't need our parents telling us this was cool.
Right.
We found the outdoor in ourselves, and we drove the movement. And in the end, to change this trend, it needs to be led by youth. They need to adopt this, but it's something we're working on. It's something the industry
and I think we're making
is keenly aware of.
And I think we're making progress. I spoke to Savag Kazansky from the Parks Project a couple of shows ago. They're doing great things. He's a young guy. And then I just recently, on episode 48, interviewed Colin Moynihan with Uncle Dan's Outfitters, and he was one of the graduates from the Skip Yowell Future Leadership Academy, and he was
my mentee.
Yeah, that's what he said. He was your mentee. Yep, and he's doing great things at Uncle Dan's. So there's a lot of progress being made to bring the youth into the outdoor world.
I'm also on the board of the Adventure Travel Trade Association, specifically the chair of the Adventure Travel Conservation Fund.
Excellent.
Which we launched last September.
Yeah.
And that's a group of, I think we've got close to 70 now, adventure travel businesses and adventure travel gear businesses and we have organized in a very similar model to the Conservation Alliance. In fact, Josie Norris sits on our board.
Awesome.
John was very helpful. And the whole idea is to get business money and reinvest it back into grassroots conservation and cultural preservation groups that are going on really outside of the developed world,
right,
where we are sending all of our customers in these great places,
right,
and we're impacting their lives, hopefully positively, but in many cases we can love them to death, and to reinvest our dollars into local conservation projects. So really fun and exciting, and a whole new a whole new organization that I think has found a nice white space that wasn't being addressed by the travel industry.
You guys got together at the recent Adventure Connect, though, I'm sure, to talk about the Adventure Travel Conservation Fund, right?
Well, I just got back from Argentina, Salta, Argentina,
Yeah.
where we held our first annual board meeting for the Adventure Travel Conservation Fund. Raised a bunch more money,
Yep.
and we have our first group of grants
Oh,
that companies are currently voting on,
awesome.
geographically spread from Mexico to Africa to Indonesia.
Great.
So throughout the world, really cool projects. It's just really exciting to see two industries that have so much in similar, the adventure travel business
Right.
and the gear business, come together around focusing on conservation and helping preserve these areas
Yeah, no, that is good.
are super important to our businesses and our customers.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And the planet.
Right, yeah. Yeah, so let's shift gears to outdoor retail, the full combat sport of outdoor retail these days. What do you think is going on there? What's your perspective on that?
Well, I got an opinion like everybody else. It's certainly it's a tough space, and I grew up in it and I love it, and it's the industry that paid my rent and sent my kids to school and fed my family. So and there's nothing I love doing more even today than hanging out in an outdoor store and looking at gear.
Right.
But you've had several more eloquent speakers on this subject in your podcast series than I am. But, I really feel like it's going to take some inspired retailers to figure out how to manage through here.
Yeah.
I think the activities, I think people are still going to want gear. I'm very optimistic long term about our industry. But we have to figure out a transition through and where our stuff is going to be sold and what that looks like. What does retail look like a few years down the way? There's no doubt that the consumer's gotten really smart and realized that there's pretty good margin between what it costs to make a product in Asia and what people are charging for it here.
Yeah.
And even though I think outdoor products have incredible value compared to other things, because of the thought and the utility you get out of them and the life,
the
of
longevity.
the
I was going to say the life. Yeah.
the longevity.
Yeah.
It's still everybody in the supply chain needs to justify their existence, and there's a lot of pressure on sourcing to drive prices down. It just follows all the way down. There's pressures on reps, from the rep standpoint to add value in the supply chain. But retail has to bring something of great value that the customer says, yeah, that's worth it. So give me the assortment, make sure I've got the size, make it as convenient as possible. Give me some help that's at least knows the product. If one more time I ask a question and the retail help picks up the hang tag and starts reading to me, I just want to strangle them.
Yeah.
And I get it. It's difficult. Part of the problem is that person's probably not being paid a living wage. So the idea that they're going to get to know all the facts and get the deep knowledge and training they need, that's a little presumptuous. But as I said, retailers need to figure out how to bring something new to the table.
Well, that's the exciting thing of all the young people getting involved in it, talking to Colin and other folks, right? They're bringing a new, fresh perspective. They're way more savvy on some of the technology than we are. They're employing it in their stores. I think that's going to help. But you're right; it does come down to the basics. I mean, you got to have trained staff, and you got to have a curated, tight assortment, and everybody's got to know about it.
So you've got to have all your business basics down.
Yeah.
When you're ready to sell something, that you've got the size and color run. And don't tell me that you can order online, because I already know that I can order online.
Right.
But beyond that, in the end, I want to come in and learn about the experience. I'm attracted to outdoor stores because of the experience. And so the more that you can be a expert in the area of experience and facilitate and make my experience and my adventures. So I think we have to go back to where we're selling the activities is really what we need to focus on versus just selling gear.
Yeah. Well, and I think, and a lot of shops are doing that. Malcolm Bailey was talking about that the other day on the show about what's going on at Neptune's and how they have the best local climbing knowledge and arguably global climbing knowledge, mountain, rock, whatever it is around. And, you and I both know how many times have we been fishing and the first place you stop is the fly shop to see what's going on local, right? What are the bugs that are working? And I think hikers and climbers do the same thing. So you have to have a knowledgeable staff.
That's it. That was the inspiration behind Roots Rated.
Right.
Was to have the local retail store help curate the website so that I can get, the best beta on the area.
Yep. There's no knowledge like local knowledge.
Yeah.
So do you have any suggestions or advice for folks wanting to get into the outdoor biz or grow their career if they're already in?
Well, I was involved early with the Future Leaders Academy, and that was certainly one place where the industry said, hey, we're seeing a lot of the boomers are aging out of the industry. We got a lot of young people that are excited about getting in, but since companies are now more medium to large size companies, we've siloed up our organizations, and we have the sea of what my daughter calls cubicle refugees out working for us that may not be looking at the broader picture because they end up in a marketing silo or a product silo, sourcing silo, and don't really see what's going on in sales or branding. And so it's much harder to get a general education and even harder to figure out what kind of institutions to get involved in outside of work that could support your career. So that was the whole impetus behind and the genesis behind the Future Leaders Academy. So I guess it starts out with, suggesting that people that are interested invest in yourself.
Yep.
I don't see where companies are spending near enough time developing employees. They're having a hard enough time just competing. And so you got to take that on yourself and have an equity mindset. So have an equity mindset as far as what are you getting out of that, out of your job that will give you a long-term payback. So what are you learning? Are you actually getting equity? I think you can look at it as real equity is important.
And like you said, if you're not getting anything,
what am I learning?
Yeah, if you're not learning at your job, find out where to learn it yourself. There's plenty of resources out there now. So, right.
And start with an annual planning and goal setting process to where you figure out where you want to be in a couple years, and you be honest about your self-assessment and say, here's the things that I need to learn. Ideally, that can be done with your supervisor, your boss, but it's really on you to develop that planning and then go get that knowledge, go get that experience. If you can't get it in your work, go get it by volunteering. I have learned probably as much, maybe more, volunteering with nonprofits.
And
it's really broadened my experience and my knowledge from volunteer fire department to working in local conservation or working with groups that are getting kids outdoors.
Right.
You have a lot to help them with, but you'll always get more back in a volunteering activity. You get more out than you give in. So that's a suggestion. Look at the nonprofit area as a career as well.
That's great. Yeah.
There's a lot of real opportunity. There's maybe more entrepreneurial opportunity in nonprofit than there is in the profit community.
Yeah.
And if you're interested in product, though I think we probably have enough product, and so looking at how to add value in the supply chain or figure out how to continue the life of a product or a material, reuse it, recycle it, is a key area. But if you're interested in a career in product, well, then make some product. Learn something about the supply chain. Simply being able to draw something pretty in Illustrator I don't think that brings anything new to the table these days.
Yeah.
And as I said, we've probably got enough product. And so figure out how to sew, how to make a product, understand the supply chain.
Yeah. Or maybe it's not so. Maybe it's some new form of getting that product made. There's all kinds of new technology. But yeah, you got to learn the basics first. Just being able to draw and send the drawing wherever you're going to send it around the world to have it made you need to know all the details. Yeah, that's good advice.
And then I would say find mentors. Once you figure out, here's where I want to be, figure out who has the knowledge and can help you. And, it takes a little chutzpah, but reach out to those people and ask them if they will talk to you, have a conversation, a coffee, and find your own mentors. Don't wait for them to find you. So, and then, take some risks and fail. I think I talked early about having a huge failure, which I thought my life was ending. When we failed at Mountain People, it was extremely sad. But I learned so much from that. Eagle Creek never would have happened if I hadn't failed at Mountain People. Right. And so really embrace your failures. And then look around the industry, be it the OIA, Conservation Alliance, Adventure Travel Conservation Fund, Camber, Sustainable Working Group, Adventure Travel Trade Association. Every single one of those organizations has an opportunity for you to engage, learn, volunteer, get involved, and meet your future mentors and understand more about the industry, the area of public land, sustainability. There's just so much more resource today for somebody in the industry than there was when we started. Shame on you if you're waiting for somebody to come to you, because we've laid it out. We've developed all these institutions for you. Everybody in my age group wants our industry to survive and thrive. And so we know that it's going to take switched on young people to see this legacy continue. So there's a lot of people waiting for you to show up. You just got to show up.
Yeah, and I think a lot of folks, there's a lot of access online. There's more stuff available online. We'll link to all those things. And I was talking to somebody early on in the podcast how the outdoor industry seems to be a little bit tough to get into. And I don't know. We know a lot of us have been in the business a long time, but once you get to know us, we're really nice, happy, fun people. And all you got to do is ask. I think there's a lot of folks that are super busy, and it may seem like they're, focused on something, but don't hesitate to go up and buy them a coffee, like Steve says, or buy them a beer, and so that you'll never know. You might make a lifelong climbing partner, friend, or like you and I, we've been adventuring around the world based on our friendship at Eagle Creek. So just ask, get involved. There's plenty of opportunities.
Yeah, I don't think there's many industries that I'm aware of that are as missionary in their what they do and their passions as the outdoor.
And as embracing. I mean, we embrace everybody, competitors, non-competitors. It's just
very collaborative.
It's like a huge high school reunion twice a year. Just jump in. You
just got to reach out.
Yeah. Do you have any favorite apps you use on a regular basis? Shifting gears once again.
Yeah,
you're a digital guy that you kind of.
I'll just read them off real quick. The ones that I love. Looking at my phone here, Pulse Point is a great one that tells you I'm a fire junkie, and so you can dial in your local area and hear about all the calls, anything that's going on, or if you're in a fire-prone area, you'll hear about it before anybody else, and you can actually listen to the call.
Cool.
So that one's fun.
Yeah.
WeatherLink is a link of people that own private weather stations, mostly Davis weather stations, but you can get it all over the world.
Wow.
And it's sort of fun. You can get very micro spot weather through that you can't get off a national. My Audubon Bird app gets used all the time. Of course, music apps. Roots Rated is a fun app to where if you're in a new town or you're traveling and you want to know everywhere from a fun trail to a place to get a local craft beer.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, good.
Recently, I've been using Duolingo, which is a fun app that you can use to learn a second language, and it's free, and they just take you through the tutorial. Super fun. Google Translate, I also use that on my last few trips, really helpful. Seat Guru and FlightAware, so that I'm a smarter traveler. TripAdvisor, same thing. I hit that pretty regularly and then give them feedback pretty regularly, which, the places that I go to really enjoy the fact that, that it's super important that they get good reviews if you like it. And if you don't, it gives you great power as a travel consumer. And then lastly, the one I hit a lot is on the east side, it's the Eastern Sierra Avalanche Center.
Okay, yeah.
It tells me what the snow conditions are. It's sort of a no bullshit, up to date approach to what's going on with snow in the backcountry.
Perfect.
So
Awesome.
really appreciate that. So those are little apps that I use.
Excellent. And how about
other than the normal ones?
Yeah, right. Yeah, we all use the normal ones. Yeah. How about some favorite books? Or do you give books as gifts very often?
I do pretty often. I just Ross Salgarini with Mountain Khakis and I just traded books. He sent me one called God, I'm in the middle of it now. I can't remember.
You can tell us later. I'll link to it.
It's a really fun book about World War II and the Italians.
Oh, cool.
And I send him one, which is pretty normal. I would send him the ones I recommend. Usually Stegner.
Yeah.
Wallace Stegner, Angular Repose is one of my all-time favorite books.
Great book, yeah.
I sent him then another guy that's similar, Ivan Doig, writes about Montana, 1800s to today, and sort of in the Stegner kind of school. He's great. I love him.
Cool.
A guy named Seth Kantner, who wrote Ordinary Wolves, which is a really interesting book about a guy growing up in the bush in Alaska. It's a great read of about being caught in between two cultures, the native cultures and the white cultures, and growing up in a rural environment.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, Endurance. That was probably one of the best books ever written.
Yeah.
7 Years in Tibet with Heinrich Herr. White Spider by and then Herzog's Annapurna.
Classics.
And then for fun, I'll read Carl Hyacin, who's writes about insanity and a very funny guy who writes about insane lives in Florida.
Wow.
A little book that for industry people that I love is Doug Robinson's. And I love the title, A Night on the Ground, A Day in the Open.
Yeah, that's a great book.
And
yep.
it's one of my favorite books that Doug wrote.
Good ones.
And of course, Muir and Thoreau in my younger days.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we'll link to all those. And this is going to be a tough one for you. What about your favorite outdoor gear purchase under $100? Only one, maybe two. You've probably got 7 or 8 or 10. Yeah,
I do.
You can email me the 7 or 8 or 10. I'll put them in the notes, but give me 1 or 2 for the podcast.
Well, and I'm, in some cases, I'm not going to say gear brands because I got a lot of friends in the business, but bought a Tenkara rod, and that's been really fun. And I think they're about $100.
I think so. Yeah.
It's super lightweight. I can take it backpacking, take it on a day hike.
I've seen you catch fish with it.
You've seen me catch fish, especially in high mountain lakes.
That's right.
So on this last trip, I bought a Big Agnes pad.
Okay.
And then bought one of these down quilts that you see, and they both fit in the bottom of my day pack.
Oh,
and
wow.
Man, they came in handy.
Cool.
Because you never know when you are traveling in the third world what you're going to end up with, and I need a good night's sleep.
Yeah.
Trekking poles, I've got a pair of carbon fiber trekking poles I love.
Those are a must, yeah.
Everywhere I go, I use my Eagle Creek packet sacks and folders. It's sort of part of my life. My Forge coffee cup, and you know what? You know what's coming back, and my newest go-to on this last trip to Mongolia for a month, and you know the belt pouch bum pack.
Oh, really?
Sort of went out of style.
The fanny pack is coming back.
The fanny pack is back.
Wow!
It is. Wearing it over your shoulder or around your waist.
Okay.
Man, it became super convenient to do it that way.
Awesome.
And to keep all my stuff together. So, yeah, I don't think you'll see me in Albertsons or Vons in my sweatpants with the fanny pack. But when I travel internationally, it's a go-to item.
Awesome. I think I saw a photo of it around a camel's hump the other day, didn't I, on your recent trip?
You did.
Yep.
You did. It fits perfectly around two humped camels front hump. Yeah.
There you go. So as we go to wrap, is there anything you want to say or ask of our audience before we wrap up?
I guess it would depend on who's out there listening to these, and it's a diverse audience because you got a diverse bunch of folks in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
But of late, because I just got back from DC working on the Arctic, is don't lose heart. We're gonna win this thing long term. It just makes too much sense, and it's easy to burn out. So if you feel yourself getting frustrated and burning out, get some time outside, but don't lose heart. This is a time to stand up.
Yeah.
Someday all of you will have to answer to your grandchildren.
That's right.
And we really, this is our moment. A lot of us were raised on movies and reading history about some of the horrible things that happened in the world to Native Americans, the slavery, what happened to our biodiversity, like wiping out millions of buffaloes,
right.
Seeing and reading about the rise of fascism during the 40s, the loss of places like Hetchy Hetchy or dams on the Colorado, and all of that right now. This is all real stuff. It's the reality. This is our moment.
Yep.
We own this time, and we own that caribou herd in the biodiversity in Alaska, and we own the monuments, and we own Bears Ears. This is ours.
Yep.
This is something we've got to stand up, and this is our time. So I don't know how you'd listen to this podcast and not be passionately involved in trying to protect these things, because it's not rhetoric. These things are under siege.
Yep, that's right.
So,
get involved.
And in the middle of that, something that as I transitioned out of a 9-to-5 it was always more than that grind of working. What I have recognized is what I missed, and what I missed was just the natural rhythm of the earth and things like sunsets. Now I can tell you what time the sun sets and where it sets, and I try to catch every one.
Awesome.
It's just a few minutes. Moon rises, if there's a full moon, I probably never paid attention, and I was always surprised. Hey, it's a full moon. Now I can tell you when the next full moon is, and I'll be watching it. And as the birds migrate through and the seasons change, I'm able to take the time to appreciate it. And I don't think it's exclusive. I don't think, I think that's something I missed, but I don't think everybody else has to. I think you can catch all that and
take a few
have
minutes.
a robust career.
Take a few minutes and go outside and check it out. Yep, that's right. Well, it was well-earned, my friend. So where can people find you? Email, Twitter, Instagram? What's the Facebook?
Probably either FaceTime or email is the best place to find me. Yep. It's just with all the different things I have going, whether I have time or not to keep up with Twitter and Instagram, I really don't. So
all right. Well,
that's the best place.
We'll put your email on there and your Facebook link on there. Well, I appreciate the time, Steve. It's been great chatting with you. And
hey, thanks, Rick. I've enjoyed following the podcast. It's great learning about all these people I've known all these years.
Right.
Learning their origin stories has been super fun.
Cool, good.
And so glad you're doing this.
Awesome.
And, I'm sure that more and more people are going to start appreciating listening to these things.
Yeah, thanks.
So sorry to soil it up with your number 50, but the rest of them, they're pretty good.
No, 50 will be good as well. Nope, they're all good. It's been fun to listen to the stories and ask the questions. I've enjoyed it, and we'll keep doing it. All right. Thanks, Steve.
See you later.
All right. I hope you enjoyed episode 50 with Steve Barker. You can find him on Facebook, Steve Barker, and by email at sbarker@oldcreekers.com. You'll find links to everything we discussed in the show notes at theoutdoorbizpodcast.com/episodes/050. I'd be stoked if you shared your favorite episodes on the socials, and until next time, thank you so much for listening. This episode's featured advocacy group is Friends of the Inyo. Friends of the Inyo is a conservation nonprofit based here in the Eastern Sierra. Their mission is to ensure that public lands of the Eastern Sierra remain wild and free for future generations. Friends of the Inyo engages in policy activism while supporting meaningful and sustainable land management. On the ground, Friends of the Inyo places hands on the land through professional crews and volunteer activities in both the front country and the wilderness. Join Friends of the Inyo on an event or support effective public lands policy and management by becoming a member at www.friendsoftheinyo.org. If you want more of the Outdoor Biz Podcast, you can subscribe on iTunes and Stitcher or go to theoutdoorbizpodcast.com where you find all the episodes, show notes, and much, much more. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at The Outdoor Biz Podcast, Twitter at Rick_Saez, that's S-A-E-Z, and my email is rick@theoutdoorbizpodcast.com. Thanks for listening and all the support, and a huge shout out to all my guests, and until next time, be sure to make time to get outside.